A fifth-grade girl had never done her homework, but during art class she somehow managed to break 50 pencils in one session. She wasn't drawing at all. The art teacher, puzzled, walked over to see what she was doing. The girl's paper was covered edge to edge with messy numbers. The teacher reminded her, "This isn't math class." But the girl didn't react. Instead, she scribbled even faster. Helpless, the teacher snatched the paper from her hands and announced the class was over. The writing stopped. But the girl didn't get angry. She simply walked quietly out of the classroom, staring straight at the sun, ignoring the teacher's calls. She seemed deep in thought. On the school's anniversary, the students' artwork was sealed in a time capsule and buried underground as a gift for students 50 years in the future. That day, the girl Lucinda stood in the schoolyard, her expression growing more serious by the minute. When the teacher turned back to look at her, Lucinda had vanished. A balloon slipped from someone's hand and floated into the sky, symbolizing her disappearance. She wasn't just skipping class. Lucinda had gone missing. The school organized a search party from morning until night, but there was no trace of her. Then the teacher heard noises coming from the school's basement. Opening the door, she found Lucinda sitting on the floor, her hands covered in blood. The teacher froze in shock. Lucinda's fingers were still moving instinctively, trying to finish writing the numbers that had been interrupted earlier. Her lips kept whispering, "Stop it." The sight sent chills down the teacher's spine, but she didn't dwell on it further. Time flew by, and 50 years later, the school honored the promise of digging up the time capsule and giving the contents to new students. Some received paintings of UFOs, bringing excitement and laughter. But one boy, Caleb, looked disappointed. Had only gotten a torn piece of paper covered in numbers. As he puzzled over it, he noticed a man in black watching him from a distance. Caleb froze. A classmate came over and teased him for being unlucky to receive just a piece of junk. But Caleb didn't care. When he turned back, the man in black had vanished without a trace. Sensing the numbers meant something, Caleb took the paper home and showed it to his father, John, suggesting it might be a math puzzle. At first, John brushed it off, even using the paper as a coaster. But by chance, he noticed a familiar sequence among the numbers. Being an engineer, he decided to copy them down and investigate. By separating and rearranging the numbers, John discovered a pattern resembling a date, September 11, 2001, and when he looked it up, he found it matched the 9/11 terrorist attacks in the US, right down to the number of victims, 2,996, exactly as written on the page. Shaken, John realized these numbers were written in 1959. Could someone have predicted the future back then? Determined to find out, he decoded more of the sequences and found that every date corresponded to a major global disaster, with the death tolls matching perfectly. Yet, there was an extra set of digits after each date and death toll that he still couldn't decipher. Even so, the evidence suggested these numbers truly predicted disasters. The next morning, John went to the observatory to ask for help from a colleague who was also an astronomer, but his friend laughed it off, saying a scientist shouldn't believe in superstition. John presented the evidence anyway and pointed out that 3 predicted disasters had yet to occur, nearest one scheduled for tomorrow, with 81 deaths. Instead of being convinced, his colleague brought up John's lay wife, implying that as a single parent working too hard, he might be delusional. Frustrated, John left without arguing further. But he didn't give up. That night, he stayed glued to the TV news, waiting to see if the disaster would happen. By the next afternoon, there was no report of 81 deaths. Exhausted from staying up all night, John forgot to pick up his son from school. When he realized it was about to rain, he drove off, only to be caught in a massive traffic jam. Pulling out his GPS for an alternate route, he noticed the coordinates displayed on the screen looked familiar. Checking against the numbers on the paper, he realized they matched exactly, and it was his current location. Could the traffic jam be due to fatalities ahead? John got out to investigate and found it was just a car accident. But when he asked a traffic officer what had happened, the officer suddenly stopped mid-sentence, turned pale, and ran. John turned around to see what had alarmed him and spotted a plane plummeting in the distance. Rushing to the crash site, John was met with roaring flames and chaos everywhere. But amid the wreckage, there were still survivors. John poured every ounce of strength into rescuing people, desperate to break the prophecy of 81 deaths. But then a massive explosion thundered through the crash site, shattering his faint hope. Even so, holding to the principle that every life saved mattered. He didn't stop. When the rescue team finally arrived, John was able to catch his breath, yet the overwhelming devastation before him filled him with a deep sense of helplessness. He could only pray the death toll would turn out wrong. But that night, the TV news hit him like a gut punch. Exactly 81 people had died. Later that night, his colleague showed up at his door now fully convinced the numbers truly foretold disasters. But John began to doubt himself. The fact that his son had received the prophecy page, and that he had been at the disaster site by chance, felt too coincidental. It was as if some unseen force was guiding him to intervene. His colleague, seeing his obsessive compassion, advised him to stay out of it, but John refused. His wife's fatal fire years ago was also among the predicted events, and the final entry on the list had no victim count and no coordinates an unknown disaster yet to come. He couldn't gamble on the chance it wouldn't strike him or his loved ones. The next day, John visited the former teacher of Lucinda, the girl who had written the original numbers. He asked about her behavior on the day the time capsule was sealed. The teacher's face grew serious as she recalled how Lucinda had been found hiding in the gym's changing room, trying to scratch something onto a door. John wanted to know why, but the teacher didn't have the answer. She only remembered that the day before the anniversary, Lucinda had spent the entire class frantically writing numbers. Words couldn't stop her, so the teacher had confiscated the paper. John showed the teacher the prophecy sheet, and she confirmed it was Lucinda's handwriting. But when he asked to meet her, the teacher told him Lucinda had died long ago. The trail seemed to end there until John typed her name into an online search. To his surprise, he found an old newspaper article revealing that Lucinda had a daughter named Diana. Believing she might hold answers, John tracked her down the next morning. He spotted Diana and her daughter Abby getting into a car and decided to follow them, eventually finding an opportunity to approach them at a natural history museum. Using a school book as an excuse, he struck up a conversation. Seeing Abby's interest in wolves, John encouraged his own son, Caleb, to join in. The children warmed to each other quickly, giving John a chance to talk to Diana. Through small talk about raising kids alone, he learned that she, too, was a single parent. The shared experience narrowed the distance between them. Seizing the moment, John revealed his real purpose. Their meeting wasn't by chance he had sought her out. Diana was skeptical, unsure how to respond. John awkwardly asked if she knew her mother had a special ability. When she looked puzzled, he showed his credentials as a mid-astrophysics professor and presented the page of numbers, explaining that Caleb had received a prophecy her mother had written decades ago. He wanted her help to stop the disasters, but to Diana, it sounded absurd. Stood up to leave with Abby. Desperate, John stopped her and insisted that the recent plane crash shocking the entire city was on the list, with the exact date, location, and death toll matching perfectly. The next predicted disaster was set for tomorrow. 170 died in New York City. Though startled, Diana still refused to be involved. John reluctantly returned home, but soon after, a car pulled up outside. Inside were two men whose faces he couldn't clearly see. They caught Caleb's attention without moving their lips. Strange sounds reached his mind, and somehow he understood. Without hesitation, Caleb approached them, and they handed him a small black stone. From inside, John noticed the scene and rushed out, fearing human traffickers. But the car sped away. When asked, Caleb said he didn't know them. They'd just given him the stone. John examined it carefully. Nothing seemed unusual. He warned Caleb never to speak to strangers again and sent him upstairs to do homework. Turning back to the prophecy sheet, John focused on tomorrow's disaster. The location was a densely populated part of the city, with exactly 170 deaths predicted. Natural disasters were unlikely. This had to be terrorism. That night, he called the FBI, urging them to seal off the street the next day. The officer on the line was baffled, and John couldn't fully explain, so he simply stressed the urgency and hung up. The next morning, John drove to the coordinates. Police were indeed present, but they hadn't blocked the street. Crowds filled the area. Furious, John confronted them, only to find they weren't preparing for an attack. They were there to arrest him for spreading false warnings. Realizing he was in danger, John bolted. The police chased after him, but he didn't have time for a cat and mouse game. The coordinates were correct, but nothing on the surface seemed wrong, meaning the attackers could be underground. He rushed to the subway station, scanning for suspicious activity. Eventually, he spotted a man clutching something to his chest, looking nervous. Before John could act, the man ran into the crowd. The chase alarmed patrolling officers, who cornered the suspect on the train. When ordered to show his hands, the man dropped a pile of stolen CD, just a petty thief. John's nerves had been for nothing, but as the train departed, a short circuit occurred ahead on the tracks, blocking the switch. The oncoming train driver spotted the danger too late. At 200 kilometers per hour, the train derailed and slammed toward John's carriage like a missile. He barely made it to the rear before it crashed into the station stairwell. John survived, but the prophecy was right again, 170 dead. That night, he didn't bother watching the news. The outcome was certain. Yet there was one silver lining. When he went to his sister's house to pick up Caleb, he found Diana and Abby waiting there. She had come to him willingly, ready to help. They agreed to search her late mother's house for clues. Diana admitted she was also acting out of self-preservation. Her mother had once told her she would die on October 19th, the final date on the prophecy sheet. She had tried to ignore it, but with each prediction coming true, she could no longer turn away. John understood. They arrived at Lucinda's old home at night, leaving the children asleep in the car. Inside, John studied the prophecy sheet and noticed something strange. The final entry didn't end in 33 as he'd thought, but into backward letters Lucinda's habit when she was alive. John realized the backward E's were not letters in a name, but the abbreviation friend of the earth that explained why the final prophecy had no coordinates or death toll, because it was predicting the apocalypse itself. Both he and Diana stood frozen in shock. Outside in the car, Caleb heard something and looked out the window. There was the man in black again. Alarmed, Caleb shook Abby awake. The stranger approached, speaking in broken English, telling the children to come with him. To Caleb's horror, Abby seemed unafraid and reached for the door handle. Caleb had no choice but to lean on the horn, alerting John and Diana. They rushed outside, but the man in black had already vanished. Caleb explained that the stranger had tried to lure them away, offering him another black stone. John barely had time to process this before hearing movement behind him. The man in black was still nearby. Determined to end this threat, John grabbed his handgun and pursued him to an open field. It turned out the man had been waiting for him. Without a word, he slowly turned, opened his mouth, and unleashed a blinding flash of light. The entire sky lit up. The attack left John temporarily blind, and by the time his vision returned, the man was gone. Strangely, Abby had also been given a black stone earlier, and since then, she had felt as if someone were always watching her. The mystery deepened, but with doomsday approaching, John and Diana set it aside. Diana just wanted to spend what little time was left with her daughter. John broke his own habit and slept beside his son. Morning brought an unexpected turn. When John called Abby for breakfast, he found her quietly coloring. She was drawing the strange painting from Lucinda's house, the one with God on his throne and a metallic sphere. The throne was colored gold. John froze, realizing what it meant, and hurried Diana to the observatory. There, he revealed to his colleague that he had once observed signs of an unprecedented solar superflare's magnitude far beyond any recorded in history. Once unleashed, it would obliterate Earth's ozone layer instantly, killing all life on the surface. Current technology could not stop it. According to Lucinda's prophecy from 50 years ago, doomsday was tomorrow. His colleague went pale, but John said there was no point in informing higher authorities. They already knew and simply hadn't announced it. The recent plane crash and subway disaster had been caused by smaller solar storms disrupting Earth's magnetic field. As John absorbed the hopelessness of it, Diana overheard and ran out in tears. He followed, trying to comfort her. She asked if hiding underground could work. She knew of a secret cave outside the city. Though John doubted its safety, he didn't have the heart to crush her hope. They returned home to pack. But then Caleb's hearing aid picked up strange signals, messages only he could hear. John found him furiously writing numbers, as if in a trance. When he snapped Caleb out of it, the boy had no memory of what he'd done. John realized the unfinished numbers might be coordinates. Abandoning the cave plan, he went to the school's basement and removed a door where Lucinda had once carved markings. Sure enough, the coordinates were there. Entering them into his GPS, he discovered the location was Lucinda's old home. He rushed back to tell Diana, but she had already left with the children. She still believed the cave was their best chance. Meanwhile, as she drove, The news broadcast the government's official disaster warning, urging citizens to hide underground and stockpile supplies. Panic erupted at a gas station. Caleb secretly called John, unable to describe where they were. Diana took the phone, gave John their location, and apologized, but she refused to change course. Then, a black stone appeared on the road ahead. Diana turned to look and saw her car being stolen, with both children still inside. Desperate, she hijacked another vehicle and gave chase. But in her reckless pursuit through a red light, a truck slammed into her. Gravely injured, she still clutched the black stone. John arrived minutes later, finding her in an ambulance. Despite the paramedics' efforts, she died at 12:00 a.m., October 19th, exact date her mother had predicted. In her hand was the black stone. John instantly understood. The mysterious beings had taken children. Following tire tracks to an open field, he finally found the man in black and demanded to know where Caleb was. The man didn't answer, but moments later, Caleb himself appeared safe. Abby soon joined them, assuring John the strangers meant no harm. The man in black had been protecting them all along, and the prophecies were left as preparation. Before John could question further, a powerful wind swept the field. Above them, a massive alien craft descended, its sheer presence forcing John, a seasoned astrophysicist, to his knees. A glowing sphere emerged, and the man in black signaled it was time to leave. A silver-haired alien whispered something to Caleb. The boy translated, "Only the chosen could go." John's heart sank. He begged to be taken to, but was refused. Ultimately, he made the hardest decision of his life, letting Caleb go, believing it was better than dying on Earth. To ease the pain, he told his son they'd meet again in heaven, gave him his wedding ring, and watched as both children entered the light. The sphere returned to the ship, which then soared into space. As it vanished, John collapsed in grief. When he awoke, the sky was no longer blue. It burned a deep, unnatural red. Driving through the chaos of a dying city, he went to his parents' home. His father, a pastor, and he had long been divided by science and faith. But now, with the world ending, they embraced. The family clung together in their final moments. On another world, Caleb and Abby placed the alien's gift on the ground and stepped into a new paradise, running toward a towering tree of life, symbol of a new beginning. And with that, the story comes to an end.